8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back everyone, it's me Matt. Thank you so much for stopping by. On today's video we're talking about naval warships and how incredible they are, but the specifics as to how incredible are is how much of a punch ships of today can take. Now, so many people have spoke to me in the past about talking about anti-ship capabilities. What can ships do to other ships? What can submarines truly do to other ships other than obviously obliterate them? But the reality is that a lot of people put the stigma of, modern warships as being these tin-foil armored, completely redundant battleships that can't do anything other than launch instead of take and receive, and that's just not the case. The way in which warships are designed today, of course, completely different to that of the battlefield days, where we have our gigantic metallic armored band protecting the guts and the magazines of the ship, and the same thing somewhat applies, but nowhere near of the thickness that we would see on, say, the Iowa-class battleships, Yamamoto, etc., because it's just not the same style of warfare. We're talking about high-efficiency, high-provision missiles that have extremely fast penetration capability to literally just punch holes through, similar to that of like a tank round with a sailboat, right? It doesn't need to be so much high explosive than it is just penetration. The same applies for missiles. That's what they are, high velocity projectiles that just punch the hole in the side of the ship and not a huge amount of high explosives. It's interesting seeing some footage that I've recently seen from the SINK-X, which is a NATO designation for knocking out old ships, kind of just turning them into ragdolls to sink to the bottom of the ocean, to put them out of commission and to use them as basically somewhat of as a reef. I'd safely say if I was a crab or some sort of crustacean, I wouldn't really want to be nesting my family inside the husk of a blown up old warship, but hey, who am I to say I'm not, Aquaman or, Guardians of the Galaxy style stuff with adventures under the sea. But anyway, I digress. Look, the reality is that warships of today are not as soft and vulnerable that you may think they are. They can take a formidable punch. I am really interested in the Falklands War. I always have been. When I visited the Falkland Islands with the British Army, it was really interesting to learn about how the naval integration with the Army and the Air Force was paramount to victory. There was absolutely no way the War of the Falklands would have succeeded without all three of those services working together. But predominantly, of course, the Navy really got them there and did a lot of the fighting when it came to knocking out the infrastructure and the required logistics to the Argentinian forces on the Falkland Islands. And when you look at some of the footage of some of those aircraft coming in to knock out those ships in harbor beside the Falkland Islands at, low-level bomb runs, it's scary stuff. We're really talking about, the bravest of pilots and somewhat, I would say, craziest of pilots trying to engage ships at such close range with whatever they could to knock out the Royal Navy at the time. And it opens the question as to, how much can a ship take? How much can a modern battleship take before it's taken out? We have obviously recently heard of the Russian warship that was destroyed in the Ukraine war going on right now. I'm not going to speak too much about that because, of course, I cannot. But I can talk about things like SINK-X and the Falklands War. Now, SINK-X is a prime example of, the bare bones ships, i.e., ships that have nothing in them. No magazine, no fuel, no crew, no firefighting capabilities, just a complete husk. It has its pros and its cons for that. The pros are that with no ammunition inside of it, it's very easy to sink. And in seeing some of the footage of, harpoon missiles coming out at high velocity, knocking into the side of these ships with not a huge amount of warhead inside of there, the ship can still somewhat keep going. And it's, as I said, just the shell of the ship primarily, but it can take a punch and keep going. You don't see, the harpoon missile hit the ship and completely annihilate it to the point of no return. Now, of course, if a harpoon missile was to hit the magazine of a ship, yes, you know, when it comes to destroyers, frigates of today, they're loaded up with SSMs, you know, surface-to-air missiles, surface-to-surface missiles. We've got magazines for the guns at the front, although not the same kind of magazines that we're used to with, you know, powdered ammunition back in the day with the big old drum kegs that get thrown into the galleons of the day, or more modernized, you know, the Iowa classes with the big 16-inch guns. They would have the same kind of powder, but not in keg form. They'd be in bag form. So if you get a projectile onto the magazine of something like that, it completely annihilates the ship. The same would apply for a modern battleship, but the ammunition's a little bit different, right? It's cased ammunition, projectiles a little bit more protected, and there's just not as much of it, because the primary weapon system for most surface ships today is missile engagements. The gun really is there for sort of surface combatants that are coming in within sort of a danger close range for the ship, i.e., you know, small surface craft, medium sort of vessel sized, that can really get a little too close for comfort that they're not aware of, or that they want to get more precision and tracking on than spending a huge amount of money on launching a harpoon on. But the same thing applies, right? The magazine's still very exposed. In the husks of the ships that you see in the Sync-X, though, when the harpoon's hitting it, it's blowing the hole in the side of it and nothing much else happening to it. Of course, you've also got aircraft inside of some of these ships, whether it be helicopters, etc., that are carrying a host of fuel. And there's a whole host of fuel inside of these ships too. You know, we're not talking about nuclear-powered ships here, or, you know, little guys in the bottom of the ships pouring coal into the boilers and stuff. That's not how it's working. It's diesel, right? We're talking about a lot of diesel inside of these ships. And when that gets hit, yeah, it's game changer. But the Sync-X examples show you that a ship, in terms of its physical structure, can take a formidable punch 2, 3, maybe even 4 times these high-velocity missiles and still keep going. Now, of course, they're taking on a host of water. They're completely inoperable. But if you had a ship that could create ammunition that is not highly explosive of some kind, missiles are somewhat inert unless, you know, hit on that explosive warhead. But if they can create a system where you don't need a ton of diesel, right? We talk about nuclear reactors, etc., but a system that's more efficient, or the fuel's even more protected, or whatever it may be, these ships can take a punch, folks. It's not like, oh yeah, you know, phalanx and seaways will only just protect it, and then after that, whatever hits it, it's doomed. For the most part, if it's fully loaded to the brim with ammunition, yes, definitely. But as I said, looking at these husks when they get hit by this stuff, it's like, wow, the ship's still standing. It's still going with no fire crew, because really what takes out ships for the most part is going to be fire, right? Once fire gets into a ship, it's like a cancer. It spreads through the hulls very quickly. There's a lot of electronics, you know, gas lines, etc., that just can expand so quickly in small confined spaces in the underbelly of a ship that it just annihilates it. So if a fire crew isn't on board of there, it's going to take it over quickly, which even then, no crew aboard these husks, these shells of a ship, it's still able to hold quite a bit of that flame without, you know, completely combusting and going into 1,000 different pieces. What is also interesting is in some of this footage, you're actually seeing the smaller armaments, so the main guns of these ships, engaging the ship as well. So we're talking about standardized projectiles, normal HE or armored-piercing rounds hitting the ship, and it's still, I wouldn't say laughing them off, but it's like, yeah, okay, and what else do you want, right? These ships are taking a good punch. Now, I don't have the metrics or the data to really follow up on these husks and how they're being hit. But let's look at the other end of the spectrum, right? What happens when a ship is fully loaded? Well, we already discussed the Russian situation. The Falkland Islands, right? Ships in the Falkland Islands were fully packed with all supplies, equipment, troops that they could carry, because they were basically sailing from the United Kingdom to the Falkland Islands, right? The only stop along the way was Ascension, and that was to just pick up more fuel, therefore just be even more of a risk. And fighter pilots coming in nice and low into the bay, not much to defend the ships in the bay at the time, other than, you know, small arms at the time, Harrier jump jets when they were on station, and unfortunately Rapier, which was the surface-to-air missile at the time, wasn't actually fully functional when the first, you know, waves of aircraft were coming in to attack those ships. And a direct hit from some of those aircraft really did annihilate the ship to the point that it was out of commission. Now, it did not grenade or nuke the ship to the point that it's completely outgone, right? Yes, the ship sank, but it didn't, you know, you didn't get a hit and then a sort of spontaneous combustion of everything else within the ship that you see within movies. We've all seen Battleship, yes, with those fancy little shape charge style things that fly through the sky and all of a sudden punch a gigantic hole, and you got sailors going up in gravity and all that sort of weird stuff. No. But that's what we always perceive in our heads as being what would happen to a modern day service vessel. Thinking about steel and hardened steel is inside of ships today. You know, aside from alien technology that launches hundreds of these little grenade-style popper things that bounce off the side of ships, like the Battleship movie, which, by the way, I must admit, I had no huge issues with Battleship. It was a fun movie. It wasn't one that was like, oh my god, this is so unrealistic. Like, who cares, right? It was fun. But, you know, if an Oliver Perry Hazard class got hit by a Harpoon missile today, it's still going to do a significant amount of damage, but it's not going to write the ship off instantaneously. Now, it really depends on where it hits, and I don't know the full dynamics and the loadout of ships today, but it's fascinating to me to know that if Sea-Wiz didn't work, if the surface-to-air missile to engage the missile prior to it coming to it couldn't get it, there is the capability of the ship potentially being able to take that hit and keep going on, somewhat limping home, or potentially even going on in the fight. And it's just disheartening to hear people constantly belittle modern day warships, and they're so obsessed with the days of old of the Yamamoto and the Iowa classes and the Bismarck and the Hood, which are all, by the way, you know, I'm a fanboy for those ships too. I love World War II ships. I love World War I ships. I love the big bruisers of battleship naval warfare. But the technicality of ships today shouldn't negate the fact that they are still warships. They should still be able to take a hit, and they can. I would love to meet an engineer and really study the capabilities, the understandings of how ships are designed today and how they are truly managed around damage control and being able to take that hit, because I don't have enough information. I mean, I did a little bit of background. There's so much different discussions about it, and there is sources, but there's also so many different types of ship, right? And each ship has its own, I guess, specific reliance. No, you're not going to up armor a fueling ship as composed to a coastal ship. Coastal ships don't need armor. They're there as a scout vessel. A heavy-duty destroyer or a heavy-duty frigate, that might need a little bit more punch, because if one of those missiles do get through there, like a Kitchen missile from the Russian forces, those big long-distance cruise missiles, yeah, that's going to take out your ship pretty quick. But I really do find it really interesting to see how much more of a hit they can take. Lessons learned, I guess. I mean, we've seen in the Ukrainian conflict, we've seen in the Falkland Islands, we've even seen, collisions of ships, which is baffling to me. For some reason, we keep having ships hit one another. The United States Navy has had a number of accidents where ships have hit ships and almost written off the ship because it's taking the hull and breaching the hull and ingesting a lot of water. But the crews, professional crews of the Navy's out there able to handle the water ingress to the ship and recover it to the point it's not going to sink. There are some ships out there, I know a lot of you that aren't so happy about, the more high-tech ships that really aren't doing exactly what we expected them to do. But again, it comes down to, how much is the Navy willing to rely upon technology nowadays? Are we going to get to the point one day where we truly do feel that ships don't need that robust framework or infrastructure to host armor, or at least the rigidity of steel, metal, whatever it is, to take a hit of a direct weapon system, whether it be a high-velocity projectile or missile? And will we just turn into a tinfoil Navy where, we don't have to worry about the hull of the ship? I mean, if it takes a hit, we're dead anyway. We protect upon Sea-Wiz and all the technology and all the advances, chaff, flares, radar, decoys, whatever it may be, from surface combatants. But what really changes the game for ships in, naval warfare is the submarine. There are no torpedoes out there today that are launched from ships or from the air that are truly ship killers more than what would be a submarine. And you're probably wondering and screaming at your scream at me right now saying, Matt, of course there's surface launched ships that can take out ships that are huge thresholds of destruction. Yes, but the submarine has a key advantage. The underside of a ship is its belly, right? The belly of the ship is where it's softest. They're not going to do a huge amount of up-armoring under the belly because they don't expect torpedoes to get in that close with the particular sonar and anti-submarine warfare that's available. But submarine torpedoes, I don't know if you've ever seen one being loaded. We're going to look at one right now, but they are enormous. They are absolutely a massive weapon system, and the warhead on side of these things is huge. I mean, that's what they're designed to do. Just take out ships, right? And yes, torpedoes from the air and from other warships are designed to do the same, but helicopters don't drop the same style torpedo that you're looking at right now. But they're absolutely gigantic warship killers. We're talking about torpedoes that can knock out, you know, aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers that are 5, 6, 7 times the size of a standardized frigate or destroyer. You're going to need a bigger punch, because in a submarine you get one chance, right? You get one chance to take that shot, maybe two, and you got to get out of there because they're going to be hunting for you. They know you've launched. You got to get the hell out of there. So you want something that when it hits that target, it's going to take it out. And that's something that always is, again, fascinating me. You know, the Russians developing the, you know, high velocity, super speed torpedo that can sort of, nothing can really stop it. Extremely long range torpedo, massive threshold, almost nuclear capable style torpedoes. That's scary stuff, right? Aircraft carrier killers. There's not a huge amount you can do about that. You can put decoys out there, but you know, technology is advancing and it's very sophisticated. So when it comes to those kind of weapons hitting a warship of today, yeah, there's not really much more you can do at that point. I mean, the water ingestion at that sort of under the sea level explosion is, you're kind of done for, right? I mean, a harpoon missile, yeah, it might get, what, 3-4 feet under the surface of the water, maybe, but for the most part, it's aiming for the hull. It's aiming for the majority of the exposed above ocean, above surface metal, and the crew should be able to deal with that. But anything under the bow is, you're having a tough time there, and it's scary. I mean, massive respect to my Navy followers out there, Navy personnel active or serving, and veterans. Like, hats off to you. I mean, I'm not a ship person, but it's scary what can be done at sea, and it's very fascinating to me. So anyway, you know, what's your thoughts? How do you feel that the modern navies are going to advance to armor and the way in which they protect themselves and the way in which they create ships of the future? They get me even less armored, more armored. Love to hear your opinion. If you did enjoy today's video, please leave me a like. Clicking that little thumb button really helps. If you can do that for me right now, please, it would mean so much. On top of that, if you want to go check out my description box below for all my associated links, including my Facebook, my Patreon, my Instagram, my PayPal. Thank you to everyone who's been supporting me financially on Patreon and PayPal. It really truly does mean a lot to me, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. Also, if you want to go check out my sponsorship partner, which is Attire for Effect, they're a clothing brand based around the artillery. Really cool stuff. Even if you're not in the artillery, they've got some really neat stuff in there, so go check it out. That's also in the description box below of this video. If you want to be notified of any upcoming content in the future, make sure you click the little bell by the subscribe button there, and I hope to see you on the next video. All the best, folks. Take care, and bye-bye.